So today's episode, we are going to be talking about struggles of being trans, political stuff, whatever we just kind of
Mhm.
want to discuss. I think that one of our biggest goals with this podcast was obviously to talk and give you guys insight on adult performers, the porn industry, OF people, and even just like social media personalities in general. I think it's like more of a podcast to give just kind of those wild personalities a platform to discuss. That's what we're interested in.
Mhm.
And obviously, you have learned a lot about our sex lives, but there's only so much sex we can talk about before I literally want to bash my head into the concrete
Yeah, no,
table.
we want to like branch out a little. I think it's
Yeah.
important, and not everything is all glitz and glamour. You know what I'm saying?
Honey, I've heard about you shitting yourself in a hot
Okay,
box
let's. We
car.
need to like. We can't talk about that anymore. Yeah, we just wanted to like just be real, honestly.
Lactate Leah. So,
Bowel movement, Bella.
okay. So today that's what we're gonna kind of be talking about. I think it's something to say about current administration and stuff, which we don't
Mhm.
want to. We're not necessarily going to speak on our personal political stances necessarily, but just more talk about the direct effects that we've had as trans people,
Mhm.
and also just different people's perception and our opinions on it. Um, I think obviously a good example and a good starting point is obviously we make hee hee ha ha jokes about it on reels and on socials.
Mhm.
Um, but like the reels about being in the men's restroom and
Mhm.
people's opinions and perspectives on that. And I think the mindset of trans women need to be in male restrooms based on the gender that they're assigned at birth. Um, obviously we think is ridiculous.
I think it's
It's
ridiculous
to
no
an
matter
extent.
how you break it down.
Mm,
If I'm so real.
there's certain levels of understanding that I have with it, and there are certain people that claim to be trans, and maybe you are, and maybe you're just at a really early on stage in it, and not to
Mhm.
gatekeep gender affirming actions.
We all have to start from
We
somewhere.
all have to start from somewhere, and it's really important to be socially and self-aware enough to know where you
Mhm.
stand in the world in
It's
social
yeah,
norms.
social awareness is something I think honestly is a little lacking,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to trans women. If I'm being so for real,
No,
because
100%.
it's like I don't know how you started, but when I did, I waited I think until I was at least I was probably like a year and a half into transitioning and like a full year on hormones. I had grown
Okay.
my hair, and not that you have to have long hair to be trans, but I was just waiting as long as I could before I even felt comfortable going in there,
Hmm.
because you don't want to stick out like a sore thumb. At least I don't. If you want attention in a bathroom, like you're kind of weird for
No,
that.
that is very weird.
But I was just like, okay, I don't want to be uncomfortable going into the women's bathroom. And I don't want to make other women feel uncomfortable with me
Hmm.
being in there.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I was going into the men's bathroom, and all the men were like looking at me weird.
Yeah.
They're like, "Why are you in here?" Like it happened like I think like 5 or 10 times where guys would be like, "Oh, like excuse me, miss, like you went into the wrong bathroom." And then
Yeah.
I was like, okay, it's time to
Yeah.
like go into the other one. But when I first started, it would have been crazy of me to like go in the women's bathroom. Like I did not look
Hmm.
female passing at all.
No, and that's important to be aware. I think, like in my situation, I started I started going in the female restrooms relatively early, kind of, but I was only using female restrooms when I was with other cis female friends.
Mhm.
So whether there was another friend or two friends, and it was like
Yeah,
a
it feels
small
more
group of
comfortable.
us,
Yeah.
I would go in and use it. But like for example, I started transitioning senior year of high school. So I was 17 when I started to socially present. I started hormones probably like the month I turned 18, I started hormones. So I started relatively young. But like in school, they actually, this was actually really sweet of them, but at the time I was like, you guys are being so drama. They made a gender neutral one solo bathroom
For you.
for me. Even though I told them
Bella's bathroom.
no, literally,
And
even
you're
though
like, don't use my fucking bathroom, bitch.
no, even though I told them not to, there was other like they thems and like non-binaries, whatever. And so like, but they did it specifically for me because those people were more like gender fluid and like more androgynous, so they could kind of go with the gender that they were assigned at birth in those bathrooms, and it was fine. Mine was very apparent that I was transitioning. Like I started senior year dressing as a boy, I ended senior year in a dress, and so for that period where I started to dress as a female, I just wouldn't go to the bathroom at school. Like it was just a thing. Like I literally
And
would.
obviously that does like physical and mental harm
and
to you to hold your bladder all day.
Yeah,
Like,
I did that though, because I did it because I felt like a freak show
yeah.
using the solo bathroom, because to me that was like less gender affirming than if I just didn't go to the bathroom. Because to me it was like, okay, I have to go to this floor and this area to go use this bathroom because I'm not accepted in the female restroom yet and I'm not accepted in the men's restroom. And so for me it felt like a weird in between. So at that point I was like, I'm just gonna wait till I go home and it feels like normalcy. And there would be a lot of times where like I would be out in public even, and this isn't what I'm saying every trans person should do, it's what I did. But like I wouldn't just use a bathroom. Or I would use like a family restroom if I absolutely had to. But I was using female restrooms like probably about like 8 to 12 months into transitioning. But I like physically transitioned, I would say relatively quickly, with just the way that I was like presenting. And like I, was wearing like wigs and stuff. I was still kind of bricky, but I never ran into any issues.
Yeah.
But I also think there's something to say that I transitioned in 2015 to 2016. So that was 9 years ago. And I think, 9 years ago. I think that there is something to say that at that point in time, socially, and in just like media and stuff, trans people were presented very differently. I think that there was less of a push for trans people to be in women's spaces that they weren't necessarily welcome for and that society wasn't ready for. And obviously there needs to be advocates for that. But even when I was in the restroom and maybe someone did clock me, there wasn't this mindset or narrative behind it that trans people were in women's spaces to harm women.
Yeah.
And there wasn't as many people that identified as trans that maybe weren't actually trans or pushing themselves in spaces that they weren't welcome in yet. So it was more like they could tell that I was trans and they were just like, okay, let her like do her thing. Like, let's like, she's just keeping to herself. She's going in her cell and she's washing her hands. Versus like, obviously we've discussed many different things that have popped off in media and gone viral of trans people in spaces that maybe they weren't supposed to be in.
It's like, unfortunately, when you open up a door for like leniency of like allowing trans people to use the bathroom they're more comfortable with, people take advantage.
Right.
It's like anything in life, like people will take advantage of the system. Unfortunately, whether that's to gain access to women's spaces or men's, but obviously it seems to be more of, a female problem, obviously.
Well, I think also there's something to say about it's not that it's more difficult, but I think socially the attributes and physical aspects of a man transitioning to a female is a lot more apparent sometimes than a female transitioning into a man. I'm not saying that one's easier or one's harder, but like our body builds are just very different than genetic females typically. And obviously so are female to male. But I think testosterone is so much more of a powerful hormone that it takes over so much faster
and it's not
than
as,
estrogen.
It's not as like threatening.
It's not as
because
threatening.
Obviously like a man in any space
It's
is just
threatening.
going to be more threatening than a female, being so for real. And it's like with like the height in our build, obviously I can totally empathize with a woman being like, okay, like what are you doing here?
Yeah. For sure.
Because it's just like anyone wants to feel safe anywhere.
For sure, agreed.
So, like, especially in a bathroom when, you're vulnerable.
No, and honestly, like, I would even feel uncomfortable sometimes.
And with like, people. Obviously, it's something to talk about, too. There's there's like baby changing tables and stuff typically in both, but almost always in female restrooms. And it's like when you get children involved too, that's when it's scary.
Yeah, for sure.
Because like
110%
people
agree.
go in there to like, you know.
Yes. So I'm going to ask you a question to get your opinion on something. And I'm super curious because I have a feeling, and we've kind of discussed this, I think, a little bit on the Danny Daniels episode. What is your opinion on the passports?
So I personally think it's stupid. I think it's so dumb. I think it should be, especially because we only make up what, like less than like 1% of the population. It's not that big of a deal. I think what it comes down to is safety, more so than knowing what's between your legs. And also on top of that, there's so many trans women, trans men who do get gender reassignment surgery. So it's like, why does the administration for anywhere need to know what your biological sex is? Because it's not going to be important. If they're looking on your passport and they're looking for a man, they're not going to like look for you or I. But if we're going to, let's say, I don't know, just, I don't want to call out any countries, but just a country that isn't the most LGBT friendly. You want to go there on vacation, that is probably not going to be an option anymore under the new administration. Let's say I get male on my passport, I want to go there. They see that, and then immediately now they're outing me as trans.
Yeah, but I have a question for you to test you a little bit further on that. Why would you want to go to a country that isn't LGBTQ friendly?
I don't.
Okay, but then why would anybody? Like, that's one of the things that I think irritates me so much is someone that has an issue with our country changing the gender markers on our identifications. And like they use that as a defense. Why would you want to go to a country that doesn't support us, fund them, give them money, and support their economy when they don't support you?
I mean, obviously the really bad ones, I'm never gonna go there.
I know, but I can think of a very popular one, and you know what I'm thinking in my head that a lot of people go to, and trans girls have definitely gone. But if we were to go, we would get held in the airport.
I would never go to where I think you're talking about going. But let's say a country that's like...
is it...
the UAE.
Yeah, Dubai.
Yeah, Dubai.
Is what I'm thinking.
United
Arab
Emirates. Yeah, I would never go there.
Okay.
I know a lot of girls do for what?
Work.
Well, I know why.
No,
But
they go for the...
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's just like a country maybe that even is like, might be viewed as like slightly less warm.
More conservative.
Towards.
Okay.
Yeah, more conservative is the better word. But like you wouldn't really have a problem if it were like you or I, like going...
Wow.
Just like going through, you know, the process of like port of entry, whatever. But now all of a sudden it might be a problem.
Yeah.
Or if you want to take it to that level, maybe it's like some sort of creep and then they're into like, I mean, that could be for anybody though. But
No, I know.
And it's just like someone who's now all of a sudden is like, oh, she's trans. Let me like follow her around.
No, that's true.
It's just like, why does it matter?
It puts a target on us as well because it does come down to a safety thing, even within our country, that it could be like if the wrong person sees that, whether they clock us or not, if you have your identification backing the way that you're presenting, at least in our situation, it adds a level of safety, I think. But then it's hard because it goes into that overcorrection where it's like, I think that when you give leniency, is when it can get taken advantage of. And so that's the hard part where it's like if you're going to a judge and it's based on a judge's okay, like how it is for a name change, you can't regulate every judge because some judges think differently than others and maybe some aren't going to follow the protocols put in place and are just going to be giving out that without proper steps, you know? And so then it's like, then you give leniency and then it's other people trying to take advantage of that in public spaces or whatever, and then it goes back into the whole cycle. So it's hard because that wasn't something that was ever corrected or changed in the first presidency, and now in the second one it is, because over the past 8 years so much has changed socially, and so it's like now we need to like correct it the other way is the mindset, I think, and that's frustrating because it's taking away all of the hard work that we've put in over the past 8 to 10 years.
That's how I feel about
And
it.
so it's frustrating that
too.
like 8 years ago we could have gotten that done and it wouldn't have been any problem.
But yeah, now it's a problem because
now it's a problem because of all the other people that are
baby
advocating.
Brickarella wants to all of a sudden,
Not even Brickarella, a man that has no gender
it could go that far,
dysphoria,
too.
that has no gender dysphoria, but is using that because they have deviant and incorrect intentions. And like Brickarella should kind of be able to be allowed if they have certain dysphoria, and you might not be the most passable, but like the way you carry yourself, you still put in that effort socially.
But it's like eventually, obviously.
Eventually you'll get to where you want to be.
But it's like, yeah.
No,
I think
100%.
I think it's like the social aspect plays a huge
For
part.
sure.
But I think I'm obviously speaking from my own point of view.
Yeah.
For me, I'm like, this is causing problems because maybe I can't go on my trip to Cabo. And that might be a stupid point to make.
It's
but
true.
It's like I wouldn't have had that problem before because you want to know what's between my legs.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Which is like for what? Like if we're going through TSA, sure. You want to make sure I'm not packing what you don't want me to pack by all means, but why does that matter for me going on vacation?
No, totally.
It makes zero sense to me.
I agree. I think that it's a very multi-layered topic, and like that's the thing is there's no right, there's no wrong, but it's important to like discuss.
Yeah, I think one that we can both agree on though, which I think would be a more lighthearted topic.
I know I dove in hard.
Trans women in sports. And I think we have the exact same opinion.
No,
on
we
this.
shouldn't belong there.
We don't belong there.
We don't belong there.
We don't belong there. Point period.
Trans women do not need to be in genetic cis women sports.
Agreed.
We don't.
Because the whole reason there's a category for women is because they can't compete with men.
No, 100%. And regardless, there's such a difference where someone like Jazz Jennings is such a great example. She's someone that it sucks. And she was in women's sports her whole life.
She was in soccer.
She transitioned when she was 4. First of all, let's start there. She couldn't even walk yet, I feel. But anyway, it's like she could, but you know what I mean? Like she was so young. Like, could she speak? I don't know. But like, I think someone like her is an anomaly. Someone that transitioned, I transitioned at 17. Let's say I was in soccer or whatever sport. I don't know. Whatever is a like lacrosse. MMA, swimming is a good one after everything that happened there. Like, there's no reason that I've been in swimming in the male category for the past 3 years of high school. And then the last year I transition and then all of a sudden I'm on the women's team. It makes absolutely no fucking sense. Trans women genetically are built typically, I would say about 90% of us have a stronger build than cis women. It just is what it is.
Our skeletal structure is different. It's literally can't change that with hormones. Like, no, babe, once you're built, you're built.
If I could get a bone shave on my shoulders and get shorter, I would.
We would. We'd be first in line.
I would be. I would whole cast my body to be 5'8" and petite. Like I would, and that's just the reality. But the reality is we can't, and it's not fair for us to take away.
We're taking away spots
opportunity from cis women that work their whole life to be there because we're forcing ourselves, not us. But I'm generalizing the statement. Other trans people are forcing themselves into spaces they don't deserve to be in.
Correct.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
It's not fair that swimmer,
Leah Thompson.
Leah Thompson.
Thompson? I think it was Thompson.
No,
she looked, can we just say, she looked fucking crazy.
She was on hormones. She was on hormones for 8 months to a year?
It doesn't even matter. If she was on them for 10 years, it still would have looked crazy.
It was crazy. But the thing is you do not deserve to be there. And that infuriated me as a trans person. And I was so scared to speak up about it.
It made me feel like a freak show.
No, because that's the way that we were presented. And that's the way that a lot of society saw us.
Was she also not embarrassed to be there? I would be so embarrassed.
I forget what the exact statistic was, but it was something along the lines like she was ranked 100th in the male category.
Yeah, she was nowhere near the top in the male
and then
category.
went to the female category and went
dominated.
To 1. And dominated because you, at that moment.
To have her build as an actual biological woman is like the odds are better of you winning the lottery. And that's why it's unfair.
No, 100%. And that was
Because it
so
doesn't
infuriating
exist.
because those are the people that get the most traction and are the most infuriating. And then they look at people like us and think that we think the exact same way. And so it's frustrating. Obviously, do I think Jazz should have been able to play soccer in high school? Yeah, Jazz never went through male puberty. And I
Yeah.
think in that situation,
That's a good argument to
that's
make.
an anomaly. If you have went through male puberty for the majority of your adolescence, you do not deserve to be in women's sports. If you never went through a male puberty and you are on hormones from a very early age and you never developed a male skeletal structure, you, I think, should be allowed to be in female sports. And that's
Agreed.
just like my perspective on it, because your body build is no different than a genetic female's for the majority, except for what's between your legs, because your skeletal structure never had enough hormones to develop.
To nitpick, like what, I guess.
But there's no way. But there's no way
I
to
know
implement
there's no
that.
way to properly
So-
be like,
so that's-
okay, like 12 is like the cutoff for
No.
like you have to start hormones at 12.
So that's why that's why I just think none of us should be included, because it's that overcorrection.
Yeah.
And that sucks because that takes away opportunity
It
from
does,
someone like
but-
Jazz. But that's the reality of being trans. Regardless of how early you
Yeah.
transition, not everything's for everybody. And like that's it.
It's like having like you were born with a bum knee. Like that sucks for you, but we're not making a bum knee category. Like it's just
No.
not. It's
And
not gonna happen.
There just isn't enough. And ideally, of course, there'd be their own league for trans people. There's going to be 5 people on a football team.
yeah.
Like that just isn't. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, not everything is for everybody. And unfortunately it comes with that territory.
Of course. And that is just. There's things that we
you-
can't do because of.
Yeah. What about like recreationally? Like let's say
I think recreationally it should be up to the foundation or the system put in place, like the team. I think if the team of adult softball players, whatever the fuck they do as adults, I don't even know, tennis, whatever. If the team accepts it and there's a majority vote where everyone's okay with it, it sucks that a team would have to vote to see if you're welcome or not. It's the reality. If it's recreational, I think it's up to the discrepancy of the team in the league. I think that because it's not something that's life altering in regard to opportunity in your future, I think that that's okay. What do you think?
I think that's like it's really hard because like obviously sports are competitive in nature, but like if you are just like trying to have fun, it's fine. But like I hate to like keep bringing it back to like high school, but like typically when you make a team, like, and that's the whole thing, you're making a team. You're not just like signing up. If you pay to play and it's not like competitive, like it's just like, do you call it house league? Like just
don't know
like
what that
that's like
is.
the standard. Like it's not like a rep league or varsity or whatever.
No,
just like whatever. I think that's fine, honestly. But I think
it's up to the gym. I think it's up to the group, the team. Because then it comes into like, okay, what if there's a trans woman that wants to play, like tennis, I think was a good example because it's a no contact sport. But if it's a female league and a trans woman wants to go on it and they're dominating because they can hit harder, they can possibly run faster, their wingspan is bigger, and still maybe their force is stronger. And I'm not saying that because obviously there are really strong women, of course, and I would never take that away from them because they've worked hard to get there. But it still could result in other cis women on the team getting physically hurt because someone is maybe stronger and have more ability than them, just genetically. And so I think that's why it's like up to them if they feel safe and comfortable.
And also, you can have like petite trans women
Of
who
course.
it's like you're who are non-threatening at all, like in stature. Like I'll just give like Cassidy as an example.
Cassidy's a great
She's
example.
such a petite girl, but it still could be unfair because it's like you're accommodating a group, a subset of a population that's like so small, but it spoils it for a much larger group.
For sure.
Because it just isn't fair.
No, it's not. And that's just one of the things that like that sucks.
Yeah,
Like, and that sucks
yeah.
for someone
And
like
people want to get
Cassidy.
into genetics and be like, you're good at a sport because of your genetics in the first place, so it's not fair for anybody. But it's like, then why have a women's league at all? And obviously, nobody wants to. I feel like no sane person wants to take that away from cisgender women having their own category for a reason.
Yeah.
If you
No,
want to
I
play, I guess just play with the boys, and you know,
Good luck.
Good luck.
No, there was a girl on the male football team in high school.
Yeah, good for her.
Good for her.
She probably killed it. There was a girl on my hockey team as a kid, and she was like one of probably
the best.
like top 2 or top 3 scorers on my team.
And do you think that made her feel uncomfortable to go on the men's team? Probably at first
Absolutely
it wasn't
not.
the most comfortable,
Well-
but then she developed into it and developed her skill and felt fine.
Yeah.
But it's like just because a trans woman has gender dysphoria doesn't mean that you should be on the team that you identify
and
with.
honestly, it probably, if I'm being real, it probably gave her an advantage later on because she had to compete at a higher level than like the cis girls were. What?
That sounds so like yeah, no, you're right.
What?
It just sounded very like sexist, but yes, you're right.
Wait, what did I say?
You go, she had to compete at a higher level with
She
the men than she
did.
did. No, you're right. It just sounded like the way
This
it sounded
whole
just.
thing is about sex.
I know.
She had to compete with like the guys in the same. Okay, let me give you.
No,
an example.
I don't give a fuck. I'm just like the way that it phrased was like women are weak and men are strong, which is true, but like it's not. But like it is.
It probably gave her a slight advantage
No, and
compared to
also-
playing with the same.
That's
with,
so-
with girls at the exact same age.
That's such a flex though. Like
No, it
that's
is a
such a
flex.
flex and that's so cool. Honestly, cunt. Love.
Yeah. I mean,
But-
okay. So there's like 2 examples I want to give. One of them was like a personal one, and it was
But where
so-
someone called you out for being a man.
No,
in a
this was
woman's
when I was
league.
like a boy. I think I was 10 years old. I was on the rep soccer team.
Oh, she was a soccer
So
girl.
the competitive one. And we won, like in our division in soccer. And they wanted to send up like a friendly match against the girls who won their division in the same region. So they're like, oh, it's going to be competitive. Like, watch out. We were 10. So this is like before puberty. But I think there might even be an argument to make. Like, you develop a certain subset of skills even before puberty.
I think
and
just based on like
we-
social norms and like what's put on you. Yeah.
And we won 30-0 in a soccer game. And that's just like, that is what it is. If you want to take it
That's
to...
actually so those
No,
poor
it was
girls.
insane. No, they started like feeling bad and like we would take players off the field. But there's...
You guys have like 5 players. They have 20.
There was... No, it was kind of crazy. And then there was another
never did
one,
that again.
which I wasn't a part of. But do you remember that friendly match they set up with, I think it was, I don't know if it was the American Olympic women's team. And they were facing off against a group of like, I don't know if varsity is the right word, but competitive 15-year-old boys. And the boys like destroyed them, like absolutely destroyed
And
them.
it was women's Olympics.
The women's gold medal Olympic winning team.
Yeah. See,
So
like,
I think it's like examples like that where it's just like,
it's just not fair.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
It's just
Sorry. But yeah, that's
sorry that you're weak.
okay. I never said that. You're just not as competitive
You're
in these
just
divisions.
not as.
And I'm not saying I am, but like
No, honestly, if I had to get thrown into
there's
a
women that
league-
could fucking kick my ass at like
oh,
any sport.
for
sure.
sure. Are you kidding? I think most people
But
could.
it's just at the extremes where it becomes competitive because you're the best of the best of the best. It's no longer competitive
longer
if
fair.
you mix it all together. And that's why women's sports were created in the first place.
Period.
Yeah. I feel like a good topic to like dive in off of this one is hormones if you're under the age of 18. I want to know your opinions on this because that's a hot topic of conversation too. It's just a lot of people want to just not allow you to have access to hormones at all before the age of 18 because before you're like of age to consent to that and your body's typically developed though, like completely almost by age 18. How do you feel about that?
I think for male puberty it's 21, but
Oh, Miss Scientist over here.
no, I think that's actually it.
Oh, okay.
Men don't stop growing until they're 21. Which I think is why certain things about me is different because I started hormones at 18. So that's what, almost 4 years prior to like your whatever, puberty stopping. That's why men typically mentally develop later than women too, because female female puberty starts earlier and typically finishes earlier. Which, that's why they say women are smarter at younger ages.
I totally
and that's
believe
typically
it.
why women and younger, like when they're younger, date older men
And
because
they
like
do way better in
mentally,
school.
right, exactly. I personally think that this is like it's so one of those things. On a broad sense, I say no. I say I don't think that people under 18 should have HRT. On a more specific, more narrowed in sense that's harder to regulate, I think 16 is a good age. And the reason that I say 16 is because you're midway through high school, you're old enough to drive, you are typically developed enough, and this is going to get a little bit specific, and I don't like talking about like genitalia and sexual like reproductive stuff,
But it's
a part of it. And I think one of those things is Jazz is another good example, where her genitalia didn't fully develop and she's had a really difficult time getting bottom surgery because of that, and that has happened to other girls as well.
Can you explain why, just for people who might not know why?
Because her genitalia never fully developed as male genitalia, so it was very, very small. And basically, when you get GRS, gender reassignment surgery, they basically cut it down the center and flip it inside out. So basically, however long it is the amount of depth that you're going to have. So if it's only 1 inch and it never developed, obviously when you're young, it just is small. You're not going to have enough to get GRS.
To ever have like a proper,
It's never going to
be
a functioning
comfortable
hole, to be
reassigned
better
genitalia.
terms. Yeah. And so I think that that's why 16 is a good age, because you've developed enough with that, but it's still early enough where you haven't finished a lot of your physical puberty. So it's a weird like in between, but it's enough that by the time you are 18 and you go to college and you want to move on with the rest of your life, you've gone through enough HRT and socially transitioning where it allows you to start your adult life where you're more comfortable, and you don't feel as like delayed as everyone else in your age group. I think when it gets into 14, 13, 12, I think is a really touchy subject because you can put in doctors, you can put in therapy, you can say all of those things. But the issue is there is corrupt systems and there's corrupt people in place that like push those narratives because of the way that they think.
And like the literal, like I remember
the groomers, and that kind of is fucked.
It's a little bit, like that. And like I remember hearing examples of 12-year-old biological females who may or may not have been trans men, but they were getting their tits cut off at like 12, 13.
That's fucked up.
That's fucked. I do think for surgery, I think it's like for sure 18.
You can castrate yourself though. If a young girl goes on testosterone when they're starting puberty and their body doesn't properly develop, fucks up the reproductive system, and maybe when they're 12 they're going through, and I hate to say it, a phase, or they're online and it's really pushed online or in the chat groups they're in or in media, and they think it's right for them and their parents are trying to be accepting and progressive, and then they realize that's not for them, and then when they're 18 and they're 20 and they're 25 and they're trying to get pregnant and they can't, that sucks. Or if with men, it's a little bit different in trans women because you can stunt your testosterone and go on estrogen and whatever. You can go back on testosterone and it will kind of typically reverse it, but your sperm count may never be the same. Your reproductive organs may never be the same.
Testosterone's a hell of a drug.
It is.
Hormone.
Yeah, but yeah, it is like it's a difficult thing, but I would say no, because that's one of those topics where if you give leniency, people will take advantage. And so
it already
has been taken advantage of. And that's the thing. Even when I was 17, I started transitioning. I could not get hormones. I needed a therapy right off after a year of therapy. I could get them when I was 18. So I was only in therapy for 8 months, but still I had to socially transition prior to an endocrinologist giving me a write-off.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's difficult. And also there isn't enough research done. Like, we're guinea pigs. And so I've been on pills for 9 years, which is not good for my liver.
Yeah, no, you should get on injections.
And I need to get off of
something else.
I know I need to get off of that. But it's like, if you start that at 12 and your body's developing and you've been on pills for 10 years by the time you're 22, like that's
crazy.
That's a lot. And so I just think no, and people can fight me on it all you want. when you are 12 years old, you do not know what you want. I knew I was trans when I was 5. I was in therapy for it. I knew again. I came back up when I was 12, 14, and then I transitioned at 17. So it's like, it happened many times, but at that age, I did not know enough and I was not strong enough to make that decision because it's such a developmental point. You don't know what is right and what's wrong. And so it's like, I'm glad that there's more awareness, and I think you should be able to socially transition. I think if you want to socially transition when you're
That age.
in that age, that's fine. And there should be resources and spaces that are safe put in place. But what do you think?
I'll just push back a little. I think I wouldn't say no overall. What I think needs to happen, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like used to happen a lot more, is it just needs to be a lot stricter of who can gain access to the hormones, because I feel like lately maybe it's getting more strict again, which I think is good.
I do.
But when I got hormones, I mean, granted, I was obviously over 18. So I think I had one meeting with a social worker, and she's like, "You believe you're trans? Like, why?" And we had like a half an hour conversation, and then she set me up with an endocrinologist, and then I was prescribed hormones like that day.
No, totally.
I knew I took myself to therapy to make sure. I was like, why am I feeling this way? Blah, blah, blah. So I
also
took the own initiative to do that, to make sure I'm altering my body. Like, I want to make sure this is what I
you
want to do.
also froze your sperm, which was really smart.
I did freeze my sperm
and
as well.
I didn't.
And
I got
it
into
killed
it
me
young.
because I had to wait like an extra couple months because it was the pandemic. It took so long to set that up. But I was like, I don't want to close the option of having biological children.
That literally could like make me cry.
Yeah.
Because I never did that. And like taking that extra few months for yourself at that time for your future self is so important. And I didn't do that one because I didn't have the financial resources to do that. And also like, I just didn't care. But now being on hormones for 9 years, I have to stop them for at least a year to 2 years to even hope to get sperm.
Yeah, because like it's not guaranteed.
And it would fuck me up even more now.
Yeah.
And so like it makes me cry that like not cry, but it like makes me want to cry that like I robbed myself of that ability because like I never will have that. And like that's just a reality that I have to accept.
I mean,
when
never say never, but the likelihood is much lower. I know Gigi,
she's
gorgeous.
on hormones for like a year and a half to 2 years.
She did.
And like I don't have it in me. Like I'm not Getty Oil money. I'm not like hide myself away in LA and Beverly Hills and like be in that accepting environment. Like that's just not my reality. And so like me stopping that, like in the environments and the situations that I'm in, that just isn't something that like mentally I could handle.
Yeah. And that's totally understandable.
Yeah.
But that also plays a part kind of into like starting at a young age. And I think you just need, in a perfect world in my mind, for like when it comes to people who are trans and want to start hormones, speaking from my experience, if I had started a lot younger, like if I were to pick like a perfect age, I would have started at 14. And I think, would it have been possible for me to freeze my sperm at that point? Because you can like, to bring it back to like, you know, a sexual aspect, typically you can like ejaculate at that age and like save my sperm. But I think regardless, I would have started because it would have prevented so many things that I feel uncomfortable with now. And it would have prevented me from having to go through like so many surgeries and stuff like that even feel as comfortable as I do now.
And still, like, I can think about us the other night where, you know, you took a video of me and a friend, or no, a friend took a video of me and you. And we looked at the video and we're like, oh my fucking God. We hated it.
Yeah.
And like, we felt like shit and we just had to like ignore it and keep it pushing. But it's like, if we would have started younger, that wouldn't be a thing.
Correct. And
so it's a catch-22.
Yeah. I probably wouldn't have had like, well, I know I wouldn't have had as much surgery as I had. And like, I'm glad I got it. And like, I don't know. I just think if I had started at that young, it would have been, my quality of life would have improved for many years. And I kind of like did know, I feel like trans people always know because you feel something off.
Yeah, I went to therapy about it. I started like dressing privately at 14 and then got too embarrassed.
Yeah.
I was embarrassed because it was so foreign and so not typical.
And
you
it
didn't see
it
in
just
media.
feels wrong and taboo, but I'm glad that now obviously there's more knowledge on that, and like younger people can like have something to relate to. For me, it was like relating to Paris Hilton's my next BFF, and there was that like super effeminate. I don't know if they were trans or not, but I related so much to that, but I didn't even know what that was called.
No, and I was a little bit younger than you. So like I kind of like not grew up in the social media era, but like Nikita Dragon was posting when I was in junior high school, into high school, I think. Gigi Gorgeous was posting, La Demi was posting. So I saw a lot of that, which made me feel comfortable. And that's when I realized actually Demi was the one that it clicked for me, which was so funny. And it started with me. Androgynous was like my stepping stone for like 2 months.
Mine was Hazel Rose D, who used to be Jam Jars on Tumblr. But just going back to that, I think if you're in like extensive therapy, and I'm talking like years, and like maybe that will push you past the age where like your voice drops or whatever the case may be, and that fucking sucks. But I do think it's important to be like, this is for sure something that you want to do. I think you need to be in therapy for years, and I think that obviously they have to inform you that it can impact you, like the side effects, whether it's not being able to have kids, and being like, we actually don't know how this will impact you later in life, but you need to just be like super aware. So I don't know. It's a touchy subject, but that's how I feel. I feel like if you're so sure from like such a young age, you go to therapy, you're in it for years, and like you have not cracked, it's not a phase. You have that like that proof. It's almost like building up a resume.
No,
in
totally.
my opinion,
Yeah.
I feel like you need to like check off certain things. I don't know what those things are yet, but
Well, and socially transition that whole period of time.
you need to be you have to show consistency and that you're not changing. And then I think, and whether that's from like 7 to 10 or like 10 to 13 or 13 to 16, whatever that may be, I think you need to show that consistency, and then you are allowed to be prescribed hormones. That's my opinion.
No, I think that that's good, and I just think it's a really hard thing to enforce.
No, it is for sure.
So that's why I would say my current thing is no, but that I agree with.
Because it's like everyone under 18, like no, like that's going to cause so much psychological harm to those who are. But I do see it obviously as protecting people who don't exactly know what they're signing up for.
Agreed.
Which is those irreversible side effects, especially for biological females who want to transition to male.
No, totally.
Well, socially transition.
Yeah.
It's just like there's irreversible side effects, like your voice can drop, and
it
ain't never coming back up, baby.
No, never.
Yeah.
Well, hope you guys enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was more serious combo.
It was serious, but I like it. Like, I love talking about this kind of stuff.
Me too.
And I think it's really good. I feel like we've touched on these subjects before, and I feel like it's something important to continuously bring up. And
keep the dialogue open and like respectful.
Open and respectful. Like, we disagreed and we agreed at the same time. And I think that that's important. And obviously there's people on both dramatic sides of the spectrum that are hard.
Think what we're saying is crazy, which I feel like it's not, but
in our minds it does make sense. I'm also curious. I know it's like comments and stuff for YouTube specifically. I'm curious if you comment some stuff that you would like us to discuss, like in regard to this. I'm curious to see the feedback that we got. Yeah.
No, I'm really curious too.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for watching the Gagged podcast. And
until next time,
stay gagged.
Bye.